Well, this is Linda, Lady in the Garden. I'm going to do a small garden tour just to kind of give you an idea of what this heat in Texas is like. It's only a high of 107 today, and it's about 5 o'clock in the evening right now. So, give you an idea of what we got here. Got my eggplant. You can see it's growing in a big, large pot. I've got tomatoes. I've got all kinds of tomatoes growing. This one's in a tub. Sunflowers and tomatoes. You can see I've got a little tomato right there. Peppers are struggling, but I do have peppers over there. Another little cherry tomato. Got cherry tomatoes right there. Got a little bell pepper. It's a little bit too small to pick yet. But in this Texas heat, you know, I think they're doing real well. All kind of stuff growing around here in my yard. I've got one of the green planting towers. It's kind of struggling right now because it is pretty hot. I do have a couple of melons growing down there. I'm just hoping I can keep the vines surviving until they get ripe enough to pick. More tomatoes, and you can see they're struggling really bad in this heat. But if they survive until the temperature cools off, they'll start producing a lot more tomatoes for me. Okra. Got some small okra there growing out of cinder blocks, and they'll do real well if I keep them watered. Hi, this is Lady in the Garden. We've got a forest fire headed this way. We already got notices that we may be asked to evacuate. But I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere until they actually tell me I have to. We're going to hit a record high probably of about 111 today by 3 o'clock. So you can see my plants are not liking it. Some of the tomatoes, depending on what variety they are, they will turn brown a little. Some of them may even die because of the heat. Some of them will survive till the weather cools off. And then they'll produce more tomatoes at the end of the summer. That's why I baby them right now. I keep them watered. Everything is struggling right now because it's almost 3, so, you know, it's almost at the high temperature of today. My clematis, still growing like crazy. It came up again from last year. But it's even struggling too. I keep it watered as much as possible. Don't want to water it in the middle of the day like it is right now because it's too hot. But you can see I've got little tomatoes still producing. It's just too hot for most of them to do anything. I've got peppermint growing, collards or kale, peppers. I've got hot peppers and bell peppers growing. Starts cooling off a little bit. These plants will take off if they do survive this heat. You can see that tomato plant right there is just really struggling. I do produce, well, you know, I do my own compost when I don't have a tub to fill up or a big pot. I use this compost bin right here because you can fill it up. Not very good with this camera. You can fill it up with compost, keep it wet, and then turn it. And that's a lot easier for me than the way I was doing it before with this little compost pile. I'll still use that though if I fill up the compost bin and I don't have tubs to fill up. I'll just pile it in here until I'm ready to use it. I don't waste anything that'll turn into soil. Now that Brandywine cherry tomato, it's really struggling in this heat. But if I can keep that thing living, it'll produce a lot more tomatoes. I mean, it's got green tomatoes on here right now. You can see right there. So they will still produce in the heat if you keep them watered. There, this is Linda from North Central Texas. Getting back with you about some tips and tricks for your garden. I have bird feeders around my yard, and I have had trouble with squirrels. Those little things will just climb right up those poles and hang on that bird feeder and throw all the bird feed on the ground. I mean, it doesn't matter how much bird feed is on the ground, they prefer to climb the pole and eat the bird food right out of the feeder. Well, I've had people tell me to grease the poles, you know, so they can't climb them, and that worked for a short time. But one day I came out here and I saw one of the squirrels, and he was up there hanging on the feeder, and I said, well, how did he get up there? You know, the pole was greased down. Well, the wind had blown dust and stuff all over the pole, and that gave him enough traction that he could get up that pole. Well, you'll see I've got tulle wrapped around the bottom part of the pole. Squirrels do not like tulle. They don't like the way it feels on their claws. So if they get near it and see what it is or touch it, they will stay away from it. So far I've not had any squirrels climbing up my tulle or the pole to get to the bird feeder. So hopefully I've solved that problem, because I've been fighting this for a long time. I don't mind the bird, you know, the squirrels eating the bird food. I just wish they wouldn't go up the pole and hang on the bird feeder, because then they dump the rest of it on the ground. I just wanted to show you today, real quick, how to make a bird feeder moat for your hummingbird feeder. I don't know if you have this problem, but the ants try to get to my hummingbird nectar when I put it out, because it is sugar, and the ants love it. Well, all you have to do is take a just regular water bottle, a small one that you normally take anywhere to drink water out of, cut the little top off of it. And I've already got mine cut off, you know, just to save time. And you have either a hot glue gun or a soldering iron or a little drill or whatever you want to use to make your hole. I use the little gun because it's real easy just to melt that plastic and put a hole in it. And then you're going to want to put your lid on there. You have to take a wire the length that you want to use for your feeder. You can bend one end to make your little hook for your hanger. And I just did it this way. You can see. You don't have to have it that long. You can cut it off. Leave the bottom open because you've got to put your, well, I can go ahead and do that now, but it's easier to put the hot glue on it if you don't have it on there yet. And then to stabilize the lid to your wire, put hot glue around your wire. The hot glue's not cooperating. It'll also keep the water from leaking out. And I try to do mine on the inside and the outside. It's a little tricky to do. You do have to get the hot glue to melt. You can always cut your hook off a little bit, you know, shorten it as short as you want it after you get it all together. Then I can get my hot glue gun to work here. I needed to replace one because I made one and I didn't seal it up quite good enough with the glue, and it started leaking a little bit, so I couldn't keep water in it. So I'm making this one to replace it. Takes a few minutes for that hot glue to dry and cool off. If you've ever used a hot glue gun, you know what I'm talking about. And a little bit more on top. Which will actually be the bottom. But I just don't want it to leak water. I mean, it's small enough and it's hot enough here in Texas that the water's going to evaporate anyway. But I want to try to keep water in this thing as long during the day as I possibly can to keep the ants out of it. Might have to blow on it to cool it off a little. And then you can take your top that you cut off and put it on there, and actually what you're going to do is just screw the cap on. The wire is not very straight. But you see the importance of keeping it halfway straight and level is because it's got to hold water. Because ants will not swim. They don't swim across water. They don't like water. So if they get to this water, they're going to stop. They're not going to go down to your bird feeder. And then all you do is take your pliers and make your hook at the top. Doesn't have to be very big. There, got a hook. It's not showing up very well because of the light in here, but you get the idea. See, not much of a hook at the top, just enough to hang it to the wire that you're hanging your bird feeder to, your hummingbird feeder, and then your hummingbird feeder is going to go to the bottom after I cut this off. Anyway, here is the ant mote that I just made, and I hung it up on my hummingbird feeder so you can see if the ants try to come down the wire now from the roof, they come to that mote with the water so the ants will not cross the water, and then there's the hummingbird feeder. So that'll make the hummingbirds really happy.